Hey everybody, it's Dan with Philosophical Fishing. Thank you for coming back for another video. Good to see you again. Just a couple things real quick before I get into the video. I'm going to start coaching with Joseph Witt-Doring, so that might mean a couple changes on my end as far as my coaching. That doesn't mean it's going anywhere. I'm still going to offer coaching on my end. You can still go through my website or through Instagram or through the link tree found in the description box on any of these videos. Find me there and I will still offer my coaching, but it might mean some changes coming up. I don't know yet, but I'm excited to announce that I will be doing coaching through Joseph Witt-Doring, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with and his videos and what he does. He does awesome work. I'm excited about it. Just wanted to tell you guys that, get that out of the way. Also, if you want to, you can sign up for a free call, a consultation call if you're interested in coaching. Same place, go to my link tree in the description box, go to my website, go to my Instagram page in the bio. You can sign up for a 15-minute consultation call. We can just chat for 15 minutes, see if we click, see if it's something that is going to be good for both of us, and we can take it from there. So just wanted to let you know about that. Okay, so the video that I want to talk about today, actually, thank you, Blue Bear. The suggestion came from you from the last video, Waiting in the Fire. So I'm going to make that kind of a part 1 video, and this is going to be part 2 of Waiting in the Fire. And basically what I talked about is, if you didn't see the last video, I talked about the early stages of being in the rehab center, coming off of benzos, and then kind of like right when I got out. And I know I'm reflecting about this because 8 years ago, that's where I was this time of year. I entered treatment August 11th of 2015. So about this time 8 years ago, I was going through psychosis. I was in the psych wards. I was in the treatment center. I had 2 hospital visits from the treatment center to the psych ward. They didn't know what to do with me. I was so sick. So they were shipping me off to the psych ward hospital. Then I would come back to the treatment center and back and forth. Anyway, it was horrendous. But Blue Bear suggested that maybe I make a part 2 and elaborate more and talk about maybe those first couple months that I was out of treatment and what that was like. And I thought that was a good suggestion. So Waiting in the Fire part 2, here it is. And I'll just start out by saying that the day I got out of treatment, which was September 25th, 2015, it was a Friday, my sister picked me up, brought me to her house, and I was coming out of my skin, anxious, crying. I felt horrible, absolutely horrible. I had only been off of benzos for like a month at this point. I was still very damaged. And I got home to her house, and so when you go into treatment, let me back up. They take all your stuff, right? You get into treatment, they strip me naked, made me do jumping jacks, made sure I didn't have any drugs. So they took all my stuff, and they hold on to your, most of what you bring in. Like, they held on to my car keys. They held on to all, the suitcases that I brought in, and they go through all of it. They make sure that you didn't bring in any contraband. And then most of the stuff they'll give back to you. Like, you can have all your clothes back and, whatever else. Anyway, they had kept my car keys the entire, how many weeks, 6-7 weeks I was in there. And then they gave everything back to me when I left. I went to my sister's house, and I was going through all of my belongings. And on my car keys, I had a little keychain, right? And on that keychain, it had a little pill fob on it. It was a little metal thing that you could twist open, and you could keep pills in there. And that's a lot of times where I would keep my Klonopin. So they didn't look in that little key fob and that little keychain thing. And I had a pill and a half of Klonopin in there. So I had 1.5 milligrams of Klonopin, clonazepam, in my little keychain. And I was like, oh God, I don't want to take this stuff. I was so scared that I had found that stuff in there. And now my wife and my daughter, who had just turned 4, were coming over to my sister's house, driving 4 hours from the west coast of Tampa to the west coast of Florida to the east coast of Florida, where I was staying with my sister. And I was so nervous I was just a nervous wreck. I was like coming out of my skin, and I was like, oh crap, Like, I know I'm going to take one of these pills and I really don't want to. You know, after everything I had just been through, coming off of all these drugs, it was like, oh my God. But I had them there and I didn't know what else to do. And so I took a half of a clonazepam before they arrived. And sure enough, I mean, all the anxiety kind of melted away and I felt much better. But also I was freaked out because I didn't know what I was going to do to myself, what I was going to do to my brain by putting that stuff in my body again. The next day was Saturday. I took another half that morning, and that was it. I had half a pill left on Sunday. My daughter and my wife were set to go back home on Sunday afternoon, and I took the other half and I flushed it down the toilet. And I knew that was the last benzo I was ever going to see in my life. Now, after they left, after the clonazepam started wearing off, it was the most horrendous, depressing, anxious, horrible feeling because I don't know, I guess I probably kindled myself somewhat after having just been off of benzos for a month and then using a little bit again. It did something to my brain that was really bad. And I just went and I sat in this chair that my sister had in the front room of her house. And I just sat there and I just cried. I bawled. And I couldn't move. I sat there for hours and I could not get up off that chair. And I was scared, you know. It was like, what am I going to do now? I don't have any more benzos. I don't want to take any more benzos, and I just messed myself up taking another pill. And it was horrendous. It was like I was looking back through this journal that I had, and I'm a documentarian. I love to write down what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing. I've oftentimes always kept a journal, you know, all the way back into high school. I like writing. I'm a writer. And anyway, I was looking back at this journal that I had during this time, and I was just writing about how I felt naked to the world, exposed, and I had like nothing inside of me. I didn't know even who I was. You know, it was like an identity crisis coming off of all the drugs. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I was going to be able to work again. I didn't know if I was ever going to heal. I didn't know anything. All I knew is that I was messed up. I couldn't work. I couldn't earn a living. I was, you know, staying with my sister at her house with her 2 kids and her husband, which they were gracious enough, and I'll always be so thankful that they did that for me. But I was just like, my life's a wreck, you know. I'd lost my house. I was a complete mess, and I didn't know what to do or where to go, or I was just holding on to life, gripping, as you know, holding on as tight as I could, one day at a time, one moment at a time, and I felt horrible. It was awful. So I know in the last video I was talking about how I would go down to the local library, and that was kind of like my little sanctuary. All I knew is that I wanted peace and quiet. I wanted to find somewhere where I could try to feel okay, and I couldn't take loud noises. I couldn't take, you know, a lot of stimuli. So I was really trying to find anywhere that was peaceful and quiet. So a library at that time was a good place for me, and I used to go down to that library almost daily and just sit there and read and, you know, pull all these books off the shelf. I also spent a lot of time going out into nature trails and just walking. You know, luckily there was a lot of nature places around where I was at, and I could just go walk these boardwalks and go get lost in the forest for a while. And I remember, this might sound crazy, maybe you guys can identify with this though, it was even in the woods, there's so much to look at, there's so much foliage and trees and animals and stuff, that even that was almost too much for my nervous system, because it was like I couldn't even process looking at all the trees and everything when I was out into nature. It was like too much. I had to focus on like just one thing at a time. Like trying to take in all of the sensory experience around me was too much for my little brain at that point. But I loved being out in nature. I loved the solitude. I loved the quiet. It was very, very nurturing and healing for me at that point. So I was doing a lot of that. But just God, going through that, my journal is like sitting right over there on my shelf. I was just reading it, and God, it was hard. I think the first 3 months is what I was just reading over, that I was off of clonazepam and Suboxone and Lamictal and blah, 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 and all these other drugs. It was hard. It was really, really hard. I was just looking around at people, and comparing myself a lot. I was 34 years old at the time, and I felt like I've just made a mess of my life. I can't work right now. I was a mess. My marriage was highly strained. My daughter was having problems emotionally, from all the turmoil that I created at home through being on all these medications and stuff. And I felt less than. I felt like I was failing at life. And it was a hard pill to swallow. That's a horrible pun to use, but it was just hard, man. I was just really, it was hard to know what to do at that point. What do I do with myself? How do I get better? Like, what? I felt so far behind. I felt like I had really made a mess of things. And my health was a mess. I was just a wreck. And I was a nervous wreck too. I mean, I could hardly function in social situations in society. Like, just going to the grocery store was a mess for me. It was tough. It's like, God, I guess I have a lot of gratitude today looking back on it, knowing that I've come a long, long way. And I share this with you guys too, to identify, just to be honest about what happened and where I was at that point in my life. The first few months, I did have little windows. Like, I did have little glimpses where I would have an hour or two where I felt like my symptoms would kind of lessen. And it gave me hope that maybe that would be my future. Like, maybe there was more to come of those little windows that I was getting at that point. And I forced myself to try to eat better for the first time in my life, to really pay attention to not putting sugary foods in my body, prepackaged, foods with a lot of preservatives and stuff like that, to try to eat whole foods, fresh fruits, vegetables. I became very, very conscientious of that because I now knew what it was like to lose my health, and I really wanted to try to live a healthier life and try to honor my body by putting good things into it. And I tried never to take that for granted today. I mean, I don't have a perfect diet, but I really try to pay attention to what I'm doing. There were just a lot of times where I got into these really, really deep, dark depressions. And around the holidays, Thanksgiving holiday was the first one to roll around. And that morning, my wife and my daughter took off to go see her side of the family, and then I was going to drive up to my folks' house to go see my side of the family. And before I left, I was just sitting at my kitchen table with the deepest, darkest black hole abyss depression, and I felt like I just wanted to slam my head against the wall and die. That's how I felt. It was really, really dark. And I don't remember how, I navigated these things exactly and how I came up and, out of all these peaks and valleys and stuff. I do know that I did connect with people, and that was really, really crucial early on, especially. I found some mentors early on who had been, on drugs for a long time, or had been, alcohol abusers for a long time. And I would reach out to them and just say, listen, I just need to talk to somebody. I need to connect. And reaching out and doing that and picking up the phone, talking to somebody who had similar experiences or kind of had been where I had been before was so helpful. And it would give me just a little bit of buoyancy to get my head above water so that I could take a breath, get through that day, get to the next day, have a little bit of hope, and then just keep going. you know. And so that's what I try to do for people today with my coaching and everything else I do. Like I'm so grateful to be where I'm at, that anything that I can do to try to help somebody else, I am so willing to do. And I made a promise to myself that if I ever got out of where I was, out of that pit, that I would do everything I could to try to help other people. And so that's what I hope to be to you today. I know this video probably sounded like it was kind of a bummer and dark, but I hope it's not. I hope that I'm leaving this video, I hope I'm leaving you and ending this video with some hope. But I think once in a while, it's good to go back and to reflect, if nothing else, so that if you're going through this right now, maybe you can identify with some of these things, and maybe you can see that, like, you know, almost 8 years later, here I am, and I'm so much better than I was. I'm so much better than where I was at 8 years ago. And so I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful to be making these videos and to be where I'm at today, that, you know, I think it's worth it once in a while just to kind of look back and just kind of reflect on where I was at. And it's part of my journey, and it's the truth. That's where I was. You know, the first few months, while I did get some glimpses, there were a lot of dark periods in there that were really, really hard. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. You know, for all the positivity that I try to put out on these videos, and I do, and that's all very, very real, it also springs from a whole lot of darkness and a whole lot of being in the depths and a whole lot of being in despair. I know what it's like to be down there. I know what it's like to be down in those valleys. I mean, I've been through some crap in my life, and it gives me more gratitude for where I'm at today. And it's not because I'm anything special. You know, this gift is here for anybody, all of us. And so that's what I want you to know. Blue Bear, thank you. I hope this video was helpful, and any more suggestions, please let me know in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you in the next video.